Hi, my name is Brian Hayes, and I will be discussing backward slices of performance degrading instructions. Let's introduce the paper that will be discussed in this presentation. The paper is called Understanding the Backward Slice of Performance Degrading Instructions by Craig Ziles and Gurinder Sohi. The focus of this paper is that some branches will contain information in them that are not essential to the branch, and therefore they'll increase the runtime, especially if they're repeated over and over again. And the problem is, how much is a program degraded by data and loops that are not essential for the loop? So in order to analyze this problem, first we need to pick a criterion, which is usually a commonly missed branch, and then we start counting instructions backwards from the criterion. And then also, with an important item to discuss is dependencies, because if the criterion is dependent on something, it is essential, and if not, it may not be essential. Now let's talk about dependencies. The type of slice you're looking at depends on what type of dependency is in the slice. So for a value slice, that's going to include valued dependencies such as math functions. And then the address slice is going to include address dependencies such as stores and loads. The existence, which is a little different, is more like other branches that may skip your criteria. And then control flow is not discussed in great detail in this presentation. For the solution, I made a configuration file in Simple Scalar to model after the architecture described in their paper. And then I had to properly extract data, which means the slices, and then I had to separate the slice into value, address, existence, and control flow. However, the paper I'm looking at actually didn't have charts to compare on existence slices or the control flow slices, so we won't have any comparisons for those. So this first comparison compares my results of the value slice to the paper's results of a value slice, and they look a little different, but they're not drastically different. So the biggest difference I notice is that I had one of my binaries had some increasing amounts of value dependencies towards the end of the slice. And in the paper it says that really shouldn't happen, but I think I looked at different binaries, so my results aren't going to match exactly. Next, I want to compare the address slices. So I again use the average slice size. And at first glance, these don't look like they match exactly. However, if you look at the charts, both the averages, my average and their average, comes up towards about 20 instruction slice size. I have a different curve getting there, and again, that could be attributed to having different binaries that I tested, but we can see that the results are fairly close. I also decided to compare this setup to the default setup in Simple Scalar, and I was able to note an average speedup of 15.5%. Some runs ran longer and some were much shorter, which ended up equaling out to this about 15.5% speedup. Now I would like to discuss the implementation of my solution to this problem. I needed to make my configuration similar to what was described in the paper. So the branch predictor, I did my best to mimic what they described in the paper. And then for the data cache, I believe I was able to accurately reproduce what they described in the paper. And they did say in the paper that they did not use an instruction cache. So I only needed to modify the data cache. Next in the implementation was I needed to make something to easily launch Simple Scalar. And this is basically just a Linux script that runs both the my setup and then the default setup, and then extracts the pipeline from it, and then saves all this to a results folder. And the final part of the implementation was to extract the slice, which I again used a Linux script for, and then I used grep in Linux to grab only the parts of the slice that the criterion depended on, and it was an easy matter to use MATLAB and Excel to analyze and plot my results. So to summarize what I've discussed, I talked about the problem at hand, my solution, and my implementation of the solution. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email address is provided on the screen. Thank you.